Here we are, MMTs. This is a daily S&P 500, and Mr. Flax here want to get his 2 cents in. Basically, it's a standard chart. It's not our platform. Our platform already told everybody last week. If you go to Stock Market Funding on the homepage, we'd already given the analysis for that reversal and where the institutions were going to get off at between 1340 and 1348. And we said that early last week during options expiration, and even the previous week, as I recall. So basically, knowing where they were going to take a distribution would also support our short sales. As you can see right here, we have a double daily reversal on the standard chart with standard technical analysis that the public will look at. However, MMTs, let us not forget, it deciphers the psychological behavior transaction within the tape and how tapes turn and how a pullback was going to be due and that kind of thing, along with the oil escalating everything. So we know that's a pretty good daily reversal. So when we look at the standard public model, that's going to tell you as a market maker what they think and what they look at and how they make their reactions to the market and their transactions to the market. So a standard individual, oh, I'm below the 20-day moving average. That's very bearish in their view. Oh, I'm turning over in the 10-day simple moving average, mathematically descending, means that there's weakness building in here. But that's a little bit more sophisticated than what you would find out of your, once again, standard technical analysis. When you're using your market maker platform and you are doing indexes, you just want to know that your platform is quite different, because it is. And each one of these lines, it's showing you how weak that this S&P has been, starting over here yesterday, and then we have a continuation, and we're making a lot lower lows in the brain, and that's inside of here. You can see that the teeny expansion to the downside has been mounting for 2 days in a row, and we have just hit a small turn intraday there on the S&P. And that we said that in other live videos, that 1340 handle right in between 1 1/4 and 1/3 up in our system to the 1350, which is 1 3/4 there, that we were going to get a lot of distribution anyway. We didn't need the oil crisis to get that. That was automatic. That was coming automatic, because we had already talked about that during the options Friday and weekend training sessions at SMF, because I know we did. And furthermore, for the new MMT apprenticeship market makers, is that the bounces all day on the S&P have been short-lived. So you have these little mini short cover bounces here and here and here, but you still keep continuing to make the lower lows all the way. What that does in the brain is that under the hood down here, MMTs, is that you would know in your IR and your VO1s, but by looking at this on a daily level, you could see the downside of the ratios are greater and the upside ratios are diminished. And the reversal ratio is diminished there, bam, and diminished there, and we make lower lows because we go right back into that negative ratio trade, which support your short sell. And so does your IR line, and so does your info panel, so does your gauges. And this is not misleading. This was never designed to hurt you. It's not sold to the public. It's not your standard. It's a market maker application. And when we start getting into other things about the S&P 500, this is our platform versus that standard platform that I just talked about. When we take a look at our daily platform. It's quite different than the chart that I showed you earlier, the standard technical stuff. This is a market maker platform. Each one of these lines are 9.78 pennies, pal. $9.78 is what each one of these lines are now. And that means that the S&P 500 MMTs has a negative delta ratio expansion, which also equals a weak move, because it means that when we go up to the SMF daily half bars on the upside, we're going to fail, because as the more days you stay in the negative ratio, the weaker the move is. And if we're not getting delta expansion, the longer we stay in a daily delta contraction descending value, meaning downward in value, makes more weakness in the name at the price action. Let it be known on this day. And that is the weakness in the S&P in the brain. And the S&P down here is now at 1305.27. If I go into the brain, I already know that a half delta is 9.78 movement. I can go in here. I'm hitting a half delta down at 1305 on the S&P. S&P is at 1305 right here in that column. Let us not be in denial. Let us not be in denial of the SMF half delta print. Let us not be in denial of that delta line and that negative half delta. If we continue to go down one full delta, that's 1295 on the S&P. That's another 10 handles lower. So here was your top, as we said it was, and then there's your drop, and that's your second day. The trick of it is the delta down move today is diminished compared to yesterday's, and so far it is. This isn't a delta, half delta expansion in the S&P 500 daily MMT platform. So it's important that we not lose sight of the factual data. That is what tells the truth. There is no speculation, nor is there an opinion. If you're looking for it, then go to the chat rooms on the internet, or go to some other stuff that's out there all wacky in the public model on the internet. Go for it. That's not what this is about. This is about the accuracy here and what it means inside of here. And this is half delta down right now. Okay? And that's 1305, and S&P's at 1305. And we're right to the penny. Okay? So that's the difference with our daily S&P 500 platform. And here's the daily movement not doing its thing. Here's your standard technical analysis. So MMTs, you're taught what standard looks like, but it sure isn't your MMT market maker platform. A market maker is making a market with the public, between the buyer and the seller, that's all. And that's the wonderful thing. You know, what's really amazing MMTs is that the public has never had their eyes open before. They don't really know what the mechanics of 1 day price action compounded by 5 days, compounded by 20, compounded by 12 months. They don't. And there's lots of things that you can make net profits and revenues for yourself by using that platform and by transacting the weakness, selling weakness short. And then when there are times like this, how wonderful, buying the strength, and how the MMT platform, like I showed in the video, works. But heck, if I ever had to just rely on a regular chart to know that, I could probably be in a lot of trouble. So what we're going to look for in the S&P is when that delta contraction, expansion delta, downside deltas stop. And at what point? Is it a half delta, another 3/4? Whatever it may be. But when it stops, MMTs in the platform, and they start to turn around in the IR and the bid and ask ratio going in your way, then that means that broader equities that are leaderships are going to follow price print, and you'd have to get net long, because at that time you would see a complete change in the brain and equities within walking that 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 dog up to the top before they slide that bid again. You've been given a gift on the S&P 500 with the understanding of the SMF MMT market maker platform.